Inside the last half an hour of the SportsMax Zone for this Monday, 7 West Indies players will have to remain in quarantine until the eve of the first official match on the tour of New Zealand from the 27th of November to the 15th of December. The rest of the squad arrived in New Zealand, of course, late last week. The late arrivals, Kieran Pollard, Jason Holder, Fabian Allen, Shimron Hetmar, Kemo Paul, Shane Thomas and Nicholas Pooran are currently playing in the Indian Premier League, which ends on the 10th of November. The Windies will play 2 tests and 3 T20 internationals in New Zealand. Head coach Phil Simmons says at least those players who arrive in camp late will do so in good shape.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult this time because when the main T20 guys get here, they're in isolation until I think the morning of the first game. So it's a little bit difficult from that point of view. But the plus about that is that they're coming from playing in a high quality tournament, so they will be sharp. And the guys that are with us, we've got to get them up to that sharpness level so that when we meet on the 27th as a full squad, everybody's on the same page. But preparation it's difficult, but it's going to be good because of the 8 guys that we have here with us.
Okay, that's West Indies coach Phil Simmons joining us now to discuss the West Indies tour and those comments by Simmons, the man of cricket, international commentator Fazeer Mohammed, like Phil Simmons, also a TNT national. Faz, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Great to have you on as usual.
Good to be on the show, Lance.
Yeah, well, first of all, your views on those comments by Phil Simmons suggesting that the players will, at least those coming from the IPL, will come match sharp, although to be fair, the statistics are suggesting that they're not necessarily covering themselves in glory in the IPL. I think Nicholas Pooran with a bat and Jason Holder with a ball have been the leading West Indies players that are actually on this New Zealand tour, but they're pretty way down on the performance list in both departments.
Yeah, that's correct as far as the individual performances and their contributions to their respective franchises. But I have to agree with what the coach is saying, because you're talking about experienced professionals, even the young ones, because they're accustomed to playing these franchise tournaments all over the world. And it's sort of like the football context now, where you're playing in some European league somewhere all the time. You get a window, a FIFA window to play a friendly international or a World Cup qualifier. You fly in and you fly back out right after it's finished. And yes, it's an unusual time. You'd obviously want to have more time working with the squad. But again, to use a football analogy, cricket is still very much an individualistic game. It doesn't require that sort of cohesion and teamwork as you would in football or netball or other flowing team sports, for example. So I would be very surprised if the excuse is ever used, if the West Indies don't do well in the 3 T20 matches starting November 27th, that they talk about the fact that the players were in quarantine and were only just released hours before the first match, because these are experienced players and they've done this many times before, if not because of quarantine.
Yeah, the equation though, Faz, would be completely different for the test team, because those players would be a lot less match sharp than the T20 men would be.
Yes, and I think that's where the challenge will come in. I think the test series, as we're agreed, we discussed this previously already. History tells us that the West Indies are going to struggle, even if they had a year and a half's preparation, even if they had the full range of every single player available now to the West Indies team to select for that test squad. The numbers and the history just show that the West Indies struggle in New Zealand when it comes to test match cricket. And of course, the COVID-19 situation will just exacerbate that challenge. And it's really up to the players, the coach and everyone associated with the squad to prove everyone wrong and show that they are capable of putting up a fight in those couple of test matches.
Yeah, I want to be provocative here though, Faz, because we know your stance on Chris Gayle, that at 41 years old, he needs to step aside and make room for others. He has not retired. We saw some innings in the IPL in the past couple of weeks that suggest that the big man still has some shots to fire. You're still strong on your position that no more international cricket for Chris Gayle?
Well, I was strong on my position, no more one-day international cricket, no more test cricket, because he really hasn't been playing that format. But
I mean T20, T20.
Yeah, but in the T20 format, given the form that he showed in the latter stages of the IPL, and if he could carry that into 2021, and the latter stages of 2021, then he must be in consideration. He has to be, simply because of that destructive ability. Maybe, based on what happened with the IPL, the best thing to do would be to just ignore him right up until the tournament, let him feel thoroughly slighted by it all, and then go out there to prove the world wrong.
I hear you, Faz. That might not be a bad position to take with it.
I didn't see that one coming, Faz. But I heard when you spoke to Lance about the fact that, these players are seasoned professionals, and it's not, apart from the pandemic, it's not something that's unusual for them, leaving the IPL and joining West Indies team. What about, though, from this angle, captains, not having your captain around the rest of the team, at the start? Not having Pollard and having Jason Holder, does that affect them in any sort of way, mindset-wise, maybe?
Well, they won't be there as far as actual training because they'll be in quarantine, but surely they will have sessions together while they are in quarantine, talking around the different situations. Karen Pollard, for example, is seen very much now as a father figure with the squad. Jason Holder, very much the established leader with the test team. So the plus is that, okay, they won't be able to practice, they won't be able to play intra-squad matches and so on, but they'll be there in person even if they are in quarantine. And again, not that you want to downplay the importance of working together and rubbing shoulders and building that camaraderie, but these players all know each other. They know each other well enough. They're familiar with each other. They know each other's games. They know what is required to do. Phil Simmons has seen it all. He's done it before. So I would be very surprised if their absence, as far as being on the field before the first ball is bowled, in any way throws them off, because so many of these players are spending much more time outside of the West Indies setup, outside of the Caribbean setup, even in a time of COVID-19, that it's almost become, as I said, that football situation where the only time you're back in with your national team or back at home is when you've got an important tournament, and then you fly right back out.
Faz, if we happen to be unsuccessful in this tournament, will we be talking about the fact that West Indies is the first team to tour two different countries despite the situation that we're faced with?
Well, the West Indies were always going to be facing this challenge, and I don't think it's about looking for excuses, because I think the West Indies going to England, the fact that they won the first test match and then fell away in the latter two, this tour of New Zealand, if they do struggle, it won't be anything new. You can't really say, well, the West Indies went to New Zealand and were shellacked and were embarrassed and had something to do with COVID-19. Maybe it would. But again, you just look at history. The last time the West Indies won a test match in New Zealand was way back in 1995. On our last campaign there, we lost one match by an innings and the other by almost 250 runs. So of course we're more competitive in the T20 format, and that's a given because of the nature and the mentality and the mindset of our players. But again, I don't think the COVID-19 issue and the fact that they are the only team to be on two COVID-19 bubble type tours, for example, is going to be that much of an issue, because sooner or later you're going to have many more teams in that situation.
Yeah. This is not related to the play, directly play on the field, Fazeer, but it's been bothering me of late. And I'm wondering if I'm getting older, because these things never normally occupied my mind. But I'm saying to myself, why is it that the black cricket team is the only one that has gone on bubble test tours? The white teams have not come to the black team's territory for a similar engagement, and I would wager, you're not a betting man obviously, but I would wager that if the tables were turned, New Zealand wouldn't be touring the West Indies at this time, and neither would England have done so in July. What say you?
Georgie, you see that discussion? It's 18 minutes to the end of the show, and you need 180 minutes to deal with that situation. Because let's make no bones about it. It's an unfair, unjust playing field in international cricket. And yes, the West Indies were scheduled to play in England anyway, but they could have easily pulled out of the tour. They played. And England seemed reluctant to reciprocate later at the end of this year or early 2021. They're going to Pakistan, probably with a B team, because their A team will be playing somewhere else. And to cut a long story short, Georgie, as I said, we don't have enough time for it. And maybe it's a good thing that we don't have enough time for it, because what goes on in the international governance of the game not just cricket, but football, IAAF, everybody. It's about the smaller nations who are invariably the developing nations, who are invariably brown, black, yellow, different shades and different hues, always get the short end of the stick. And we are always made to feel uncomfortable if we were to bring it up. The time for that nonsense is ended, has come to an end. I think if Black Lives Matter is really to mean anything, no West Indies team at any level, male or female, should take the field if the opposing team refuses to acknowledge taking a knee or raising a fist. If black teams can't stand up for Black Lives Matter against teams that have no concern for it, then this whole talk about George Floyd and whatever else would have been a complete waste of time.
And to further the substantive point, even as we avoid things that would cause this conversation to stretch, do you think then that our Cricket West Indies leadership should have insisted, England, yes, we'll send our men to play in July, but sign right here signifying that you are going to undertake a reciprocal tour by X month next year, and that the same thing should have been handed to the Kiwis to say, yes, of course we'll tour in November to December, but sign here indicating that you will reciprocate next year as well. Do you think that that should have been done at the leadership of Cricket West Indies?
It should have been done, but let's face it, George. We are among the beggars of world cricket. This is what it's all about. We don't make any money from any tours other than England, India, to a lesser extent Australia. So we are left hoping and begging. We got a loan from the ECB, which was given quietly. It was paid back and so on. But it really references the extent of the financial plight that is being experienced by Cricket West Indies. So you could argue they're in no position to bargain. They're in no position to demand a reciprocation because the ECB could very well say, look, we are scheduled to come in 2022, take it or leave it. We can get someone else to come in if you don't want to come in the summer of 2020. And this is the reality, George. And at the end of the day, it's whether or not we see things bigger than just cricket, bigger than just your ranking, bigger than how much money you get from this television rights deal, how much money goes to how many players or whatever, whether we actually see the bigger picture. For example, the IPL, come on. You have the IPL, which is predominantly non-white, yet there is not even the slightest suggestion that they would take 30 seconds to acknowledge the issues faced by the discrimination of those who are not white in world sport, not just cricket, world sport. So that's just the way it is. And if we are not prepared to change it, if we're not prepared to disrupt it, it's going to continue that way.
Perhaps it is that the picture of West Indies cricket on the funeral program for it, whenever funeral time comes, it will be a figure cap in hand, Fazeer Mohammed.
It could very well be. I hope it isn't. But I think, George, to cut a long story short, we were the trendsetters of the game. We defined the game. Many players and those who love the game all over the world look to the West Indies for generations. We need to stand up now. Our Cricket West Indies board needs to stand up now and say, if Black Lives Matter is supposed to mean anything beyond just periphery and just a 9-day wonder, we need to set, because we are a predominantly black team, and we need to set the standard, and who doesn't like it, just too bad.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that, Fazeer. All the best to you.
Take care.
Break time.